this is the problem. Like when we jabber on,
Yeah.
I can talk about anything, but like trying to force like this topic that I want to talk about is hard.
All right, we're just gonna do it. This is Systems in Play. I'm Sam,
And I'm CJ.
and we're talking about cooking in
Yeah.
games.
Yeah.
All right, Go ahead.
No, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say you brought something to talk about.
Oh yeah, I did. It's cooking. We're gonna talk about cooking. Like when I say cooking in video games, what do you think?
So yeah, you sent me the topic like sometime last week, and what I did is like just immediately wrote down my initial thoughts of like what I answered this question immediately at the time without realizing that you were going to ask it.
Good.
So for me, like immediate thought, Tears of the Kingdom cooking mechanic. I thought of Cooking Mama. I thought of those like Club Penguin, like pizza restaurant, like that unspoken genre of games where you're like putting ingredients on a thing with the orders coming in. Sort of like Overcooked, I guess.
Yeah.
But
Overcooked.
but 2000s Flash specifically, like I
Papa's
don't know if
Pizzeria.
Yeah, Papa's Pizzeria. I'm sure that's the most famous one. I do feel that is a genre that was done a trillion times.
I'm gonna take you to a dark place. Do you remember Purple Place?
I know of Purple Place. Leslie really liked Purple Place. I have no experience with it.
It's like a Windows default game. One of the mini games is making a cake. I remember 3-year-old CJ and his grandma's old computer just making cakes. Anyway, so that is pretty much the first thing that you think about when you think of cooking in video games is like Cooking Mama. Definitely Cooking Mama. I wanted to talk about like cooking as a system in a video game that's not about cooking.
Okay.
Cooking in games where cooking is not the entire premise of the game. And I split up the types of cooking in games into like 2 categories. There's hands-on cooking, where you have a mini game or something that you actually do to cook the food. And then there's hands-off cooking, which you already mentioned, Tears of the Kingdom. I would consider that hands-off, even though you like select ingredients.
Yeah, I mean, you put it in a pot.
Yeah. you don't do the cooking. So first off, let's talk about a hands-on cooking game. I know you might have some stuff to say. Pokemon Sword and Shield.
Oh yeah. That one had the curry cooking minigame, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
And it was tied not only to the camping mechanic, which was in certain areas of the game, you could like take all your Pokemon out of their balls. They walk around, they interact with each other, and then you can heal status conditions and health for your team with the cooking mechanic. And for that, it like initiates a thing. You do like a little Joy-Con spinning mechanic where you're like literally moving your hand around to stir this pot of curry. I didn't do it that often.
Yeah.
So that's about the extent I know. Other than that, it eventually became tied to like the Dynamax mechanic in some way.
Oh, see, I didn't even know that.
It's not super relevant to the topic.
Okay. I know I played a little bit of Sword and Shield, and the most enjoyable parts I had were at the camp. Just sort of let your Pokemon run around.
Oh man,
that was fun.
I could spend 8 episodes talking about the interactive elements in Pokemon games. They have done a lot of different things over the years, and they're just always consistently good. I love that concept of just taking all your guys out and doing something that's not necessarily fighting.
So yeah, the cooking in Pokemon is like you said, you just stir stuff and then you fan stuff, but you actually have to use motion controls to do all that?
Yes.
See, I played it and I do remember doing it, but I don't remember all that. I spent like 20 minutes trying to find, not 20 minutes, I spent a while trying to find footage of the cooking minigame, because every time I typed in Pokemon Sword and Shield cooking, it was like trying to give me recipes and the right stuff to do. Based on that, I'm guessing that the actual game itself didn't add much or did it add much to like the experience playing Pokemon?
I think so. In terms of system, it was a solution to the problem of Pokemon slowly going open world.
Okay.
Pokemon Sword and Shield was, I believe, the first main series, aka not spin-off Pokemon game, to do an open world. And it wasn't actually an open world, it was an open area. So the wild area was like a big section kind of in the middle of the map where you could just walk around. Pokemon just kind of walked through the grass. Well, you could see them in the overworld. You could actually control the camera with the right stick, which was a first for Pokemon, because the DS didn't have two sticks until the new 3DS came out.
That's right, yeah.
So that was like their first experience with that. The problem with that is they did not include Pokemon centers in the wild area. Kind of the story design was that it's, this is a difficult area to inhabit because, all the Pokemon just run wild. Like early in the game, you can encounter something that's 30 levels higher than you. It's supposed to be a more challenging area. And so rather than having Pokemon centers everywhere, you have to do a camp. You set up your camp, you let all your guys out, and then you can heal using the curry minigame.
Okay.
And this is actually something that Pokemon has done before. Other games had, it was called like Poffins, where you would mix batter using the DS second screen.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
I didn't play much of the DS era. I think that kind of fell under the umbrella of the DS has a touchpad and we want to use the touchpad for games.
Right.
But it was a similar thing. But anyway, the design problem that the cooking was trying to solve was how do we let people heal their team without having to like build Pokemon centers everywhere.
And that would be an example of like a hands-on cooking thing. You're like actually doing stuff to make the food. Whereas a hands-off type cooking deal would be, say, like Skyrim, other types of RPGs where you go up to a table, you go up to a cooking pot, you press A on the thing you want. As long as you have the ingredients, you cook it. It's just made, and then you eat it. Back to Pokemon for a second. You said that it's just for healing. Does it add like status effects or anything?
I do believe you can.
Can you like buff your Pokemon using food?
That's a good question. This is not actually a mechanic that I used very often.
Okay.
Somewhat notoriously, the games are pretty easy and straightforward.
That's
so
fair.
I say, as somebody who's played these games for a very long time and knows all the type matchups, if you know the type matchups, the game is pretty easy. For people who don't know all that, it becomes a lot harder.
Okay.
But for me, I just didn't need to do it very often. I would more often than not just open up my camp to play with my guys and then close it out without even doing the curry mini game. So I couldn't tell you. I will say, though, that the next mainline game in the series, Scarlet and Violet, did do a combination of the cooking mechanic, healing your team, and they do buffs. But in a weird way, the buffs are not related to your team explicitly. It's related to encounters.
Oh.
So you can buff like ice encounters. If you make a certain type of sandwich, it will increase the number of ice types you catch,
Okay.
or decrease the catch rate. Sorry, increase the catch rate for a certain type, or increase the amount of physically large Pokemon you see. There's a bunch of different options, and I think the main one that people use is you can do like a shiny boost that gives you a 0.01 increase for catching shiny Pokemon, but
Okay.
it's significant enough that it's worth the investment.
Oh dang! I didn't even know. Is there like a mini game for making the sandwiches?
Oh boy, is there! So yeah, it's reminiscent of the Sword and Shield one. They, I think, did a little bit better this time by not making motion controls a mandatory thing.
It's always good.
You have your sandwich ingredients that you can collect just throughout the game. You can go to certain shops and buy them. I think you also get them as rewards for certain things. You pick your ingredients, or you pick a pre-made sandwich. That's the first phase. The second phase is physically putting all of the items on your sandwich.
No.
So you have your bread laid down, and you like click A, and then drag your food item onto the sandwich.
Okay.
And it is very, very jank. Like, the challenge of it comes from just how awkward the controls are.
Huh.
Not anything else. Like, it's a weird perspective that it puts the camera at that makes it weirdly difficult to hit the sandwich with the food that is theoretically like inches above it. And the only other challenge is like, occasionally they will give you a sausage that is an entire round sausage, and for whatever reason they have like a physics engine calculating when you drop the sausage where it will roll.
What?
It's very weird. It's very weird. And so, you have to be careful, like, oh, I can't drop this sausage on top of the egg or else it will roll off of the sandwich, because I'm dropping the sausage at like head level above the sandwich for some reason. Like, it comes down with so much force.
Oh my God.
It is bizarre. And Scarlet and Violet is notoriously a very buggy game. And my most recent sandwich adventure, the bottom bread did not spawn in at all. So I just would drop the vegetables and the meat, and they would fall through the picnic table.
Oh my.
They would just fall through the table, and
So there's like actual physics going on here.
yes, it is like it is an actual physics simulation of making a sandwich, but again, like dropping the food items from like from your head if you're sitting at the table. It's like you're holding above your head and then dropping food items. It is so weird. It is so specific.
Very bizarre.
So yeah, it is like what was the word you used? A hands-on cooking method?
Yeah.
It is like a very weird simulation of that, but it definitely is. Like, as much as you can make a sandwich, you are dropping the ingredients onto the thing.
Oh, man.
And then there's this lovely animation that plays after of like your sandwich. It's like rotating, and they have your Pokemon in the background. And when it glitches out really bad, it'll, it's like my bun is not visible anymore and just a pile of meat. And it like jankily glitches into my character's hands, and I eat. It's honestly a riot. It is a riot with how bad it is. And nobody asked to have physics simulations in the sandwich maker.
That's such a strange choice.
It is cool. I will say, like, as far as implementing like the effects that come with it are pretty interesting. None of the other games, I believe, have done a mechanic that lets you manipulate encounter rates like that. So I think it's interesting. I think it's a cool thing that they did, and obviously, like, it's nice for the people who like to do shiny hunting because it can increase their odds. And if they're looking for a particular one, they can do, increased ice type, increased shiny odds. It makes it it gives you a little bit more strategy rather than just like running around with a hope and a dream.
That is so. It sounds like the sandwiches themselves are like cool, but the mini game is like take it or leave it.
Yeah. That's
okay.
I'm pretty in the camp of leaving it.
Okay.
If it was a little bit more well done, I could maybe have more fun with it. But it wasn't a huge fan.
Okay. So that being said, what do you think of the curry in the previous game? I guess you already said you didn't play with it enough to form an opinion, I guess.
Yeah, it was okay. When I needed to do it. Okay, so here's what I'm going to say. As a mechanic, I did not like it that much.
Right.
But as a game, like as a piece of world building, and as like just the vibe of, oh yeah, I'm going to go chill in my tent
Yeah.
with my Pokemon, and I'm going to make curry, and we're all going to eat the curry. And it has like a little animation of all your guys eating the curry. I love that.
Yeah.
That's really cool, and it just feels very cozy. Scarlet and Violet, I think, kind of swung the opposite way, where I wasn't as into like making a sandwich and sharing it with my Pokemon. For whatever reason, that just didn't quite work for me. The animation for them eating was also really awkward and kind of silly. And then the mechanic, so the vibes off, but the mechanic itself, like the effects that it has on the game, are a lot more interesting. And because of that, I've actually used it more. I've engaged with the system more.
Okay.
Even though it's less, I don't like it as much, but I've engaged with it more.
That's interesting. That answers some questions that I think I was going to have later, actually. So yeah, no, back to the hands-off system. We were talking about Skyrim earlier. I was going to ask if because in Skyrim, when you're cooking, it can do as little as healing you, but it could also do as much as like changing the outcome of a fight. Some of the effects that food has can be pretty crazy, I think, depending on what you cook. I've heard that it can be a game changer cooking. And from what I understand, that's not the case in Sword and Shield, but that is the case in Scarlet and Violet. I wouldn't say game changer, but like definitely something that once you find out what it does, you use it a lot more, yeah?
Right.
Okay. That answered some questions then.
So let me ask you, you have a number of hours in Skyrim, right? That's not your first time.
Just a few.
Have you, it sounds like you haven't engaged with the cooking mechanic that much.
No, and actually not. And I want to blame that on because Skyrim is so huge and there's so much to do. And I played it on PS3. So anytime I wanted to cook, you'd have to like go to a place to cook, which is usually through a loading screen or something.
Oh.
But I don't know. That's probably why I haven't engaged with it as much. But I have heard that like once you get the cooking down and like where to get ingredients and stuff, it can change the way you play the game. Even if that's like marginally, it can become a game changer.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But another hands-off that I wanted to talk about, another hands-off system I wanted to talk about was Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Even though that and Skyrim are both, I would consider hands-off, because in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, when you're cooking, you just pick up to 5 ingredients, you throw them in a pot, and then food appears.
Yes.
And what differentiates that besides the what differentiates that from Skyrim besides besides picking the ingredients yourself is that you can screw up and make something bad.
Yes.
In Skyrim, you can't do that. Like you pick from a list of pre-made recipes and you make it.
I see.
Besides that differentiation, I find Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom's cooking a lot more engaging and a lot better, and I use that a lot more than I did in Skyrim.
So yeah, context. I'm a bad person. I haven't played Skyrim. I started one playthrough at a buddy's house, and then I had to go home. Didn't make it very far. I own it on PC now, but I haven't started.
That's the problem. You only own it on one system, my friend.
I need to get it on my Amazon Echo.
Yeah, on your toilet.
That being said, the cooking mechanic in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is one that I actually do engage with, despite like I generally don't get a lot from cooking mechanics. Like, they always feel like an extra thing. Like, oh, you're struggling with this boss or this thing. Why don't you go try and cook?
Precisely. Like in Breath of the Wild and, in Skyrim, if you're struggling and you get food and it helps you, whatever. In Breath of the Wild, there are places you have to go where the temperature can mess with you. There are places that you have to go where there's like certain resistances to types of damage that like you can't beat without.
Right.
And the cooking mechanic / alchemy mechanic is how you get around that.
Yeah, they make it really simple and streamlined to use, and then they force you to use it.
Yeah.
And because I'm forced to use it at least in some scenarios, I'm more open. Like I'm at least familiar enough that it makes sense to use it in other scenarios too. I'm like, oh yeah, well, I need this fire elixir. I might as well, make me a couple meat skewers as well. And even though, like, it is maybe possible to play the whole game without cooking, it would be a lot more difficult to do it that way. It's just, it just forces you to use it enough that you become familiar with it, that it doesn't feel like a huge chore to do it.
And then later, once you've like scoured the entire continent and you have like all the ingredients imaginable, it's fun then to like just put stuff into a pot and figure out if it does what you think it might do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if I recall correctly, you haven't played Tears of the Kingdom, right?
I haven't yet. And is that any different than Breath of the Wild?
It actually is. There are a couple of changes to the cooking mechanics.
Oh.
So for one, you have a recipe book. I don't think Breath of the Wild had a recipe book.
No. This was one of the things I was about to complain about with Breath of the Wild. Maybe. Let me see what you're going to say first.
So the recipe book has a list of like your most recent recipes that you've cooked, going back for a pretty long way. They have a pretty big cache of recipes that you've done, and you can select one item and say, let me just make the exact same thing that I made with this item before. And it automatically selects everything. You do it. Extremely nice quality of life thing. They also, it's like a little recipe dex where when you go to the stables and they'll have the signs up on the wall that have, that area's local cuisine, and you can make it. When you make that, you actually get a new entry in your recipe Rolodex. So not only does it feel like you've actually done something by making those, you have like, the slightest bit more encouragement to interact with that mechanic.
Yeah.
You also can remake it anytime. Once you make it once, I'm like, how did I make that cake?
Exactly.
You can go and actually look it up because you have the recipe in your thing. Also, the most important change to cooking between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is when you are cooking, like when the food is in the pot, Link hums little snippets from old Zelda music.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it's like,
Amazing.
just like little snippets, all of them from different games. It is so charming.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Probably doubled the fees for Link's voice actor to add
Probably.
doubled his lines between games.
Dude, so my big question about that recipe book is, can you mass produce food now?
You can only do one recipe at a time.
Okay, that was my big complaint about Breath of the Wild. I was going into a big fight, and I'm like, man, I sure wish I could mass produce these meat skewers instead of cooking one, what is it, the hearty
Durian.
Any of the hearty foods, just throwing them one at a time in a pot and waiting for those to cook. I like, wish I could just throw 5 of them into 5 pots.
Yeah, I agree. That would be nice. I say it's mitigated by being able to like select a previous recipe, though.
That is still a big change for me. I like that a lot. And another game I would like to talk about is a nice little middle ground between the two. Monster Hunter. Have you ever played any of the Monster Hunter games?
I have not, actually.
I've only played World, but in World, before you go on a hunt, and actually I think during the hunt, you can go to this restaurant ran by cats, and you get a nice little animation of them cooking your food for you.
Nice.
You don't have to do anything. You just pick what food you want, and it gives you a little stat boost depending on what weapon you're using, blah, blah, blah. But that would be the hands-off part. It's really nice. It gives you stat boost. But once you get into the field, if you start running low on stamina and stuff, like it burns your stamina meter, so you can't use as much. You have to like find a smaller monster to kill, and then you have to like go and actually like roast it.
Oh.
Which is really neat, because you have a little
fun.
roasting mini game, and if you don't stop it right, it burns, and you have to just do it again. It's a little minor inconvenience, but yeah, Monster Hunter is a nice little middle ground between those two.
So you've brought up the two main modes of cooking games, which are hands-on and hands-off, and then there's kind of a middle ground for some. I think the theory that I'm developing is the vibes of cooking mechanics, which are just kind of mechanical. They're there purely for functional reasons.
Yep.
And then they're vibes. And I'm going to say, like, Sword and Shield had good cooking vibes where I'm at this camp. It's the same thing with Scarlet and Violet where you're at a camp, but for whatever reason, I like the vibes. Eating curry, it's like a warm, hearty meal. In a similar vein of talking about vibes, in Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, I like the feeling of prepping.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I need 5 diamonds so I can, rebuild the champion's weapons. And so I need to find some stone talos. And if I'm going to find some stone talos, I should get like a defense up spell. So I'm going to go, I'll go to the stable and I will, make a few recipes, do this, do that. Just this feeling of preparing for a battle, preparing for this engagement before it happens is, I think, part of the vibe of cooking that I really like. And especially when it makes you go somewhere to do it.
Yeah.
I think the feeling of cooking in those games would be very different if you could just drop a pot anywhere. Although you can do that in Tears of the Kingdom. It's just a limited item.
Yeah.
But, having to go to the stables and do it, and there's people you can talk to while you're cooking, and it's just this feeling of being around a campfire and preparing for what's next, I think is really cool. How would you say that the vibes in Monster Hunter are? They sound pretty good. I love the idea of my food being prepared by a cat.
Oh man,
my cat needs to start pulling his weight, to be honest.
The cooking vibes in Monster Hunter are peak. Let me tell you, the little cat restaurant at the beginning. I gotta send you one of these animations after this. They're so good. You get a whole animation of them cooking your meal and then bringing it out to you.
I may have seen some clips of it before.
Oh, they're so nice and quaint. And the infield one, I think it is. Because another thing you have to do in field is like sharpen your weapon if it starts getting dull, and it's not really a mini game, but it also is a short little animation that you have to do, and sometimes in the middle of battle. I don't know if like cooking a piece of meat is something you want to do in the middle of battle, but I feel like it's fast enough to where if it's an emergency, it might be something you have to do in the middle of battle.
I see.
So it's a cool way of like the hands-on part. Still, like you have to micromanage when you don't do it.
So that brings me to a similar, or like a follow-up question. When you make the food in Monster Hunter, can you just eat it immediately, or is there some kind of a mechanic for consuming it?
No. The cat section, they bring it to you, and I think there might be a little animation. No, they just bring it to you, and I think the animation cuts to you having finished the food. And that's it. And for the infield one, you just it's like a potion. You press it and it eats it.
Gotcha. Yeah, same with Breath of the Wild.
Although a little mini game where you have to like try and eat a big meat on a bone without messing up would be hilarious. I like your theory about vibes and like how it feels in the world that you're in because, well, hold on. Hold that thought. I want to talk about Kingdom Hearts 3.
Oh.
Kingdom Hearts 3 has a cooking mini game.
I did not know that. I have not played any of this Kingdom Hearts games, except for that one time where we played a little bit together. That is my full experience. I kind of grew up with Kingdom Hearts, although I played them in a weird order. I played 2 first and had no idea what was going on. And then I played 1 and I said, oh, I still have no idea what's going on. But the Kingdom Hearts 3 cooking games. Okay.
I only wanted to bring them up because I found them really funny.
Okay.
So Kingdom Hearts 3 has a bunch of little mini games that you can play throughout it. A lot of JRPGs do that, and there might be a lot of cooking mini games that I haven't talked about because I don't play too many modern JRPGs. But the Kingdom Hearts 3 cooking mini game is when you meet Ratatouille himself.
Oh.
You meet Ratatouille. Sora puts little Ratatouille on his head.
Yes.
And then you cook. But it's like one of the mini games is cracking an egg, the game. literally, you have like a 5-second count in to the mini game.
Mm-hmm.
You press, I think it's down on both joysticks at the right timing, and that's the mini game. It's over. The mini game is like a lot shorter than the countdown intro and the victory music that you get afterwards. It's so hilarious to me. You'll have to see all these. They're hilarious.
Yeah, just literally like making the food.
And also, I haven't played enough Kingdom Hearts 3 to know what you accomplish by cooking. I don't know if
I mean,
you
if
get
it's
a
in,
stat boost.
I guess, Ratatouille world, is it just like the story for that level?
That's the thing. It's not even in Ratatouille world. It's in the like Kingdom Hearts OC world. Ratatouille's just there.
Kingdom Hearts is a mystery to me, but I love everything I hear about it.
So it's you go to the Kingdom Hearts OC world with all the anime boys and girls from Kingdom Hearts 2.
Right.
And there you meet Scrooge McDuck with all the anime boys and girls. And he's like, I have an idea for a shop, me lads. And then he opens up a cafe, but he needs a cook. And who appears but Ratatouille and Sora? It's magical.
That
Kingdom Hearts is a magical game.
is amazing. That is so goofy. I love that.
No pun intended, right?
No pun intended.
But anyway, that's another type of hands-on cooking. And we talked about hands-off cooking. And you said earlier that it's the vibe that you find important and the vibe within the context of the world that you're in, right?
Right.
Which brings me to these other games that I found, which sort of solve that problem, I think.
Okay.
Patapon has a cooking mechanic.
Okay, so I'm not super familiar with Patapon. I do believe I played a little bit.
So Patapon is a rhythm-based strategy game where you lead a little group of these Patapons through a level, sort of like a Mario level or whatever. But you play a 4-note beat on your drums, which are your 4 main buttons. And whatever 4 notes you play is a different command. You can send them forward, you can send them, make them retreat, hold up their shields, whatever.
Okay. Makes sense.
But case in point, it's a rhythm game. The
Right.
cooking in Patapon is a rhythm game. Based on how well you do, you get a better dish, which raises your stats more.
Okay.
So, like, it's genius. It's a way of cooking, but, like, within the world of the game. It's a rhythm game.
Yeah. No, I like that. I feel like cooking kind of has a rhythm to it a little bit inherently, and it feels like that kind of goes well together.
It is. So what it is there's a giant talking pot, and you play as a little Patapon with a big cleaver. And it's just, I think, Fruit Ninja, but you have to do it in time with the music.
Nice.
And that's it. That's the whole mini game. But I just thought it was interesting that it's a type of cooking, but like within the context of the world, within the gameplay of the game.
Right.
You're like playing a rhythm game to cook. And the other game on this small list would be Professor Layton.
Oh,
Do you know
okay.
that game?
I know of it. I've seen a little bit of gameplay. Have not played through the series myself.
Professor Layton's like, the first 3 were DS games. They were little puzzle solving games, like the little puzzles you'd see on a newspaper.
Okay.
It would just be hours of that. So
Nice.
the second game, I'm not sure if the first one had any mini games, but the second one has a few mini games, one of which is a little tea set you get, and you can brew different teas.
Oh.
But the gameplay mechanic comes from the fact that you get like a certain amount of ingredients, and you can brew up to like 12 different teas. And throughout the world, you'll find people who will be like, I need a tea because I feel A and B. And I need a tea that can like remedy that and that. And it's like, it's a little puzzle game within a puzzle game.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So it's like trying to find, I'm anxious and depressed. And so you need oolong with a hint of lemon.
Exactly.
Something like that.
Exactly.
Oh man, that's just describing my life.
Exactly. So like, I feel like if games want to put in a cooking mechanic that could still the end result could still be something like Breath of the Wild or Skyrim, but the actual gameplay part could be something that integrates what you're already doing in, like, maybe put a little spin on it somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. And you said the actual mechanic of making the teas is like another little puzzle.
It's just putting three ingredients. Like, you tap an ingredient, you drag it up, and then that's it. That's the entire gameplay loop. But the actual part of it is trying to figure out which tea or which person wants which tea, which is a puzzle in itself, which is the entire game. It's just puzzles like that.
Okay.
So I feel like if board games wanted to integrate something like that, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Not specifically that, but like whatever the game's trying to accomplish. I don't know. That had a weird point that I was trying to get to. It's somewhere in there.
I think I see what you're getting at, where it's the mechanics are very tightly integrated. The cooking feels like an extension of the game because it uses the mechanics that you're already using.
Right.
And even though Tears of the Kingdom is a hands-off cooking game, I think part of what makes it feel a little bit better is when you physically hold all of the items and you drop them in the pot.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It's a very small thing, and that's a mechanic that's used for a handful of like random puzzles, or just being able to hold something in the game and drop it is a mechanic that is occasionally used for other things.
Yeah.
And the way that you interact with the pot is you pick up the things and then you drop it. It's not quite on the same level as the other things you're talking about, but it's in that vein of it feels better because it feels like it's a part of the world. It's not like this separate thing. It's not something you pick from a menu.
Yeah, exactly. Like Skyrim and other Bethesda post-apocalyptic game. You just go to a cooking pot and you open a menu and you select what you want.
And not to belabor the differences between Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet, but if I recall correctly, when you're making the curry in Sword and Shield, you can like see the pot and then you can see your guys walking around in the back while you're doing it. Don't quote me on that. I'm 90% sure that's the case. Scarlet and Violet, you are in Sandwich Universe. Everything outside of the game does not exist. It could be a completely different game, different menus, almost a different art style, practically. And then once you finish the sandwich, you give it to your Pokemon in this little animation that plays, that also just doesn't feel cohesive with the rest of what's happening.
So the entire cooking feels like sort of an extended cutscene or something.
Yeah, like a weird extended cutscene in a mechanic that just feels like it could have come from any other game. It doesn't feel like it feels like a mini game that is not a part of the main game. It doesn't use any of the mechanics. I'm not like doing a Pokemon battle to cook the food, which could be really interesting. Like I have to give a fire type a meat item and then it has to use a fire type attack and it cooks it. I don't know. But yeah, I see what you're saying, that like when the mechanics of cooking, and I'm sure this can be pasted onto other mechanics, but when they feel native to the game, it makes them feel better, and I think just generally like more approachable.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that every game should do that, because it is a bit difficult for Pokemon and a lot of other JRPGs that have cooking to do something like that, because how would you turn turn-based combat into a cooking thing? Or did we just come up with an idea?
Maybe your enemy is like a pile of ingredients. If I'm making a soup, I have to use a water type attack. And then I have to use a fire type attack to boil it.
No joke.
All right. Hold on. We might have something here.
Let him cook.
Let him cook. That's the name of the game.
Yeah. Maybe that's already a thing. I don't know.
There's so much stuff out there. I'm sure it probably is, and I would love would love to try something like that
Mm.
if it is.
I guess another one of the games that sort of integrate cooking into its main mechanic, which would be a stretch, would be like Stardew Valley, because the whole deal is making money, like trying to grow stuff and make money, and if you cook it, that's another way to make money. But
Yeah, that's
it's
fair.
a weird roundabout way. I guess this is a bit too broad, but like, I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. Something I wanted to talk about.
I do have another one that I want to bring up.
Yeah.
What do you think about Minecraft's cooking and eating mechanic? Because I'm sure that there are other games that do it like Minecraft. I'm positive that it is not unique to them, but I cannot think of any others off the top of my head.
So there are like two different ways, I guess. You just straight up craft stuff in your crafting menu, or you like put stuff in a stove and wait is the cooking part.
Right. And then the eating where you have like your hunger bar that you have to fill up, and then that restores your health can only be restored if your hunger bar is full.
So I was gonna say that the eating, the actual animation and having to do that added to the I don't know, difficulty of it, because you have to go through that animation before you're healed, or else you got like a second that could save your life or whatever. But once you eat, it's like a slow regeneration thing, right?
Right.
Because originally Minecraft didn't have the hunger bar. Like, it had the eating mechanic before it had the hunger bar, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure before there was a hunger bar, you eat and that just instantly restored hearts. So I think the eating animation did come from that urgency of having to eat mid-battle and making it part of the challenge, but eventually it just was part of the aesthetic of Minecraft, I think.
I see. Huh. It is, I think, of all the ones we've talked about, it is probably the most, it reads to me as more accurate to how, eating sort of works. If you don't eat for a long enough time, you lose health. And if you're not eating and if you're constantly hungry, your body isn't going to be able to like repair itself because it doesn't have the fuel. It sort of tracks, like that sort of tracks to how Minecraft's works. And I do like how, it feels very diegetic to everything else. Like, I can smelt iron in this oven,
Right.
or I can put meat in there and it will be cooked because it's fire. It feels pretty good. I like that. I do struggle with it. I feel like it's not super intuitive. Just if you've played any other game with a cooking mechanic, food is basically just a potion.
Yeah.
I appreciate that they do something different, and I think it adds a little bit to the survival aspect. And I have to imagine that a lot of other survival games use similar mechanics. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I believe most survival games with like a hunger bar would be classified as those types of cooking games, or games with cooking integrated into the core mechanics of survival. But yeah, you can't talk about cooking games either without talking about Dave the Diver.
Oh, see, I've not played Dave the Diver yet.
Dave the Diver was the 20. What year was that? The 2022 hit. Dave the Diver. I would put as an honorable mention, because honestly, I think it's you. I don't know. This is a weird caveat, but you catch the food, but the other guy cooks it.
Right.
But I guess it would still. I don't know. It's a fun little game, but it's kind of the entire reason I bring up cooking was because I've been watching Delicious in Dungeon. And I was like, man, what if this was a game, but you have to like bring food back to the surface to cook for a restaurant? I was like, oh, this is just Dave the Diver is what I'm describing.
Yeah. Well, give me like a quick rundown of what the gameplay loop for Dave the Diver is. Because I know it's a pretty unique system.
I haven't gotten terribly far in it.
Mm-hmm.
So, from what I remember, it is you go down into the actual action part, you dive, and you have a spear gun, and that's how you catch the fish that you want to cook. You catch those fish, they go into your inventory, and you get back to the surface without running out of oxygen. And that's the first part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go into the second part of the game, which is now that you've collected the fish, you choose what's going to be on the menu for that night.
Okay.
And you don't cook it. The sushi, it's sushi, you don't cook it. But the sushi guy cuts it up, makes the sushi. Your job as Dave is to pour tea for people that are eating the sushi.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And is that like a mechanic? How does that work? What is the mechanics of doing that?
Oh, it's been so long. I think it's like a little physics game where each water droplet is simulated and you just try to get it in there. It's really funny.
Okay, that's fun.
Yeah. But I think after that, then you go back to diving the next day and then you rinse and repeat. And I think there's a lot more because I haven't played Dave the Diver that much. But when I was talking about cooking and games, I was just like, I got to talk about Dave the Diver.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I still need to check that one out. It looks really fun.
Yeah, I need to play it more.
I think we would be remiss to not talk about Cooking Mama.
Yeah.
Although I feel like it is possibly a separate category that we would call like simulation.
Hands in.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point is just you make the food. They try, with the DS, and I guess they have a Switch one now, but like DS was peak Cooking Mama.
Right.
It was made for that system. I'm just trying to replicate the actions that you do, and that's the whole game. That is the whole game is, you're cutting vegetables, you are drawing lines across the vegetables on your screen, you're stirring a pot, you are physically mixing the material with the stylus. But yeah, it doesn't really quite fall into the other categories because it's not a mini game. It is the game.
Yeah.
You know, perhaps you could consider like each ingredient is like its own mini game, and it's a series of mini games, but it's a different thing. But you can't talk about cooking without mentioning Mama.
I've never played Cooking Mama, actually.
Oh, really?
No.
It's really good. It's really charming. It's really funny.
What is the gameplay loop in that?
So I haven't played a ton of it, but basically you just have recipes and you try cooking them.
Oh.
And it's, like, do you overbeat the eggs? Do you like crack the egg and get it on the side? Do you cut the carrots at like, do you not cut them at equal lengths? And that all goes into like your score at the end. So essentially it's like a series of little micro games themed around preparing certain items in food.
Okay.
And then your score at the end is, the quality of the dish is determined by how well you did on each micro game.
Okay. Yeah, see, so cooking games would be an entirely different topic that I need to talk forever about. Especially Papa's Pizzeria.
Yeah. Oh, those, there was a million different iterations of like, make this thing for people. You'll have a running list of the things at the top of your screen, and you have to try and keep up with the demand.
Yep.
That type of thing has never been super appealing to me. I get past like the first 2 levels, and then I get stressed out, and then I turn it off. But it seems to be like in 2005, that was the thing to make. Everybody had one.
They just wanted to cook back then.
And you could flavor it, in any way you want.
Yeah.
You could do ice cream or cake, or and I'm sure that there are some that are not even food themed. It doesn't even necessarily have to be.
Right. I think there was one that was just pancakes, and that was the entire game. It was making pancakes. But yeah, no, cooking in games that aren't about cooking, and cooking in games that are about cooking. Celebrate cooking.
Yeah. Speaking of cooking, a place well known for its food is Italy.
Yeah.
Someone who has an Italian accent is Mario.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. Last week I picked up Mario Wonder on the Switch, and I wanted to talk about it for a little bit.
Oh yeah.
I think I'm about 2 worlds in. I finished the first world, and I've done a good chunk of the second one, and I am personally like my genre of game, probably like out of everything, is platformers. I love platforming games.
Hell yeah.
I say is I think in my top 5 list, I didn't mention very many platformers.
Didn't you?
I mentioned Risk of Rain.
Oh, okay. No, see, that's what I was saying about our top 5. There's a lot more. There's a lot more.
But no, I love platformers. I love, and I think, going back, I remember saying I like tight controls that I can just like play around with. That is, platformers is one of like the ultimate incarnations of that for me. Is I can just run around with these mechanics that feel good and just let my finger muscles take over. So love platformer games. Obviously played a lot of the Mario games. Mario Wonder, I think, had a pretty big hype cycle around it, just because in terms of the 2D style Mario games, there'd been a very long period of time where everything was under the new Super Mario Brothers label.
Yeah.
And those games were good, but they were just very safe. The first ones came out, and they just really like iterated on that in terms of adding new levels, but without really doing anything else interesting with the mechanics of the game.
Right.
Mario Wonder comes in, it has a new art style, has a different system for like picking playable characters, added Daisy, which I know a lot of people were really excited about. Really, like, not just change the art style, but change the animation style. Something a lot more just crisp. It has really crisp, cool animations.
It looks a lot more alive than the other Marios.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I think that's something that can only come from 3D animation as a art form coming as far as it has. Think about, that was Wii era when the new Super Mario Brothers games came out. Like, we really, in the grand scheme of things, haven't been doing things with 3D for very long, and we're really just now starting to experiment with what that can be, what that can look like. And it's gotten really good. And it might be like a little bit cringe to say, but I feel like I felt the DNA of Spider-Verse in this new animation style for Mario Wonder.
I don't think I think you could feel the DNA of Spider-Verse in a lot of the new 3D stuff that's coming out, to be honest.
Yeah, it's just almost, the word keeps coming to my mind, choppy, but I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just like tight cuts. It's not trying to simulate it's trying to express.
Yeah, exactly.
And you don't need to animate every single frame and have this fluid motion for it to look good.
Right.
And so anyway, Mario Wonder has a lot of new animation. It looks great. And the thing that I want to talk about with the animation changes, the art style changes, some changes to the mechanics of the game that have been long time series staples to Mario, have been changed for, I haven't played all the Mario games, but as far as I know, some of these changes are first for the series. I'm curious, because you played a bit of Wonder, right?
Yeah.
If you can guess what I'm getting at.
Did you not write them in the notes?
No, I did write them in the notes. Okay, they got rid of the time limit in Mario, and that has been in the game since the very first one. Almost a holdover from like the arcade era of games, where every level has a time limit. You reach a certain point, it's the iconic like speed up of the music, double time.
There's no time limit in Wonder?
There's no time limit in Wonder. There are for certain levels. There's like time trial levels. But by default, there's no time limit, and you can walk backwards. I think there have been other Mario games that have done that. But the combination of not having a time limit and being able to go back and forth, I think really changes the game for me.
It brings some of what the 3D Marios have, where you can
Yeah.
sort of explore the level.
It feels a lot more like an area for you to explore
Yeah.
than necessarily like a platforming challenge. I mean, that's still there,
Yeah.
but there's some of the things in the game that I feel like they knew. I feel like they've leaned into that design aspect a little bit. And some of the hidden secrets in the game are almost mini puzzles. So, for instance, and I don't know. I don't know. I'll let you be the judge. There's this level fairly early on where you're introduced to these characters that have big gloves and they can push pipes forward and backward across the screen. I think the first kind of clue that you have to pick up on is those things are big. They can push pipes. When you're the elephant, you can also push the pipes. I don't think that's explicitly stated anywhere. You just kind of have to figure that out naturally through the game. So you find that out. You find that you can do that. Later on in the game, you find, I think there's an instance of like two of those pusher guys. I don't know what their names are. They're pushing on the same pipe, and so they're in a stalemate, and it's not moving. You can kill one of them, and it will push it in one way. You can kill the other. You can push it in one. You can push them both and just push the pipe yourself. But it kind of opens up this idea of maybe the direction that I push this pipe is important. And when you push it to the left, I think it's the opposite way of what you would think. The game, you naturally go right in Mario. If you push it to the left, there is like a pipe nub sticking up, and the pipe that you're pushing like falls on top of it and it clicks into place, and then that is a warp pipe for you to go to another level.
Oh, I don't think I did that.
Well, that's the thing is I didn't either the first time I played the level, but I saw I didn't get all the wonder seeds for that one.
Oh, okay.
So I go back through the level, and that was the point that I'm like, oh, this is kind of a different game now, because I can go almost all the way to the end of the course, see that I still haven't gotten the wonder seed, and then just walk back.
Unheard of before, yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very different. And I don't think that's necessarily like a design feature where they want you to be backtracking in levels. At least as far as I've seen so far, that hasn't been a required mechanic.
But it's still like, it's nice that you can do that, though. It's a nice option.
Yeah. And I feel like the game, to an extent, there wasn't anything stopping me. There wasn't a bunch of like gaps that were too big where, you could only jump from one way.
Yeah.
It felt like, I noticed that there was one area where there was an area in the background that it was obvious that I could go to with a warp pipe. I see it in the background. I'm like, okay, I know that there has to be a warp pipe around here. That's probably where the wonder seed is. And I just, it became like a little puzzle game of me. Like, I'm like, okay, what are the elements I have here? I have a pipe. I have these two guys. What is that trying to tell me? Like, what, they're pushing. I inherently want to kill this one because this is the closest one to me and it pushes it the other way. What if I kill the other one? And that ended up being how I solved it. And then later on in the level, you have to use that pushing mechanic to open up another warp pipe where it clicks into place. And I thought that was really interesting. I don't think it was necessarily meant to be like a stop everything you're doing and think about this as a puzzle, but I could.
Yeah.
I could, and I really appreciated that. I feel like the time limit in Mario games hasn't really been necessary for a while. Like, in many cases, it's just not relevant because even though I'm not that good at the game, I can still clear it without taking any time. All it's ever really done is like kept me from finding the secrets, and just having that freedom to take my time and explore the area and think about the puzzle was really cool. It was very different for a Mario game.
Yeah. I like that a lot of, I think it's a lot of Nintendo. They're like trying new stuff with their games.
Yeah.
Like Breath of the Wild was the first big one I noticed, was like, this is an entirely different Zelda. And then with Arceus, this is an entirely different Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
And then with Mario Wonder, this is an entirely new 2D Mario, which is neat.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely feels like, I don't know, the Switch version of the game. And all of the mainline Switch games have seemed to be at least a new iteration on what the series used to be.
Maybe that was Nintendo looking at their Wii U, which, beloved, I like the Wii U, but it didn't do as well as the Wii, and they were just trying to do like a Wii 2, so Switch literally switched up the game with the games themselves and the console. It's really neat. And I think it's not limited to Nintendo, I don't think. Crash, the new Crash Bandicoot, it's the fourth one, it's about time. They got rid of the live system, which was a thing that was just a hindrance in the other ones.
Right.
Yeah. So there's no lives in that one anymore, which is neat.
I think it's interesting that, games have been around for not a long time in the grand scheme of things, but also long enough that there's kind of expectations that we have that aren't necessarily needed anymore. I still think that there's like vestigial limbs from the arcade era that kind of hang around, like the life system in many cases is kind of arbitrary. I mean, that still exists in Mario Wonder, and I don't understand what the point of it is. Like, okay, if I lose in a level over and over again, I lose all my lives, and then nothing really happens. Like, I go back to the beginning of the level, but I'm not losing any real progress if I die.
Is there still a score, like a score system? I know that's one of the big things from the arcade era that I just, in any game it's in, I'm like, all right, sure.
I actually don't know.
Maybe there's
I
not.
kind of don't pay attention. I know it. I think there is. I think there's still a score.
It looks like there's not a score, according to Reddit.
And I don't necessarily think that it was needed.
Yeah, any game now where there's a score screen after a level, not once have I read it. One of my favorite games, Metal Gear 5. I like all the Metal Gears, but Metal Gear 5 comes to mind when I think of a score system at the end of your level. But the only reason it's relevant is because if you do good enough, you get a stuff. And I want all of the stuffs. That's the only one I can think of that's sort of a newer. That's not even new, is it?
I guess a lot of games have like the score that contributes to a rank system.
That's fair. That's fair.
Like what immediately comes to mind is like Sonic games where, it's a combination of the number of coins you have at the end and how quickly you completed the level. And, some people are motivated to like repeat levels so you can get an S or S plus rank.
That is fair. That is very fair.
I think it does make sense for like speedrunning type games, which Mario sort of was at one point. And I wonder, I think it's interesting that they have the time limit on certain levels, but not others. And I'm curious as I play more of the game to see if they do anything interesting with that and have like some true, this is just straight up like a puzzle level. And then this is a speedrun level where it's a time limit and you need to see how quickly you could do it.
I'm going to be honest. I didn't realize Mario Wonder didn't have a time limit until today.
I mean, I wouldn't blame you because I forgot. I didn't realize that a lot of the games still had a time limit until I was, trying to figure out how to get to a certain secret and then died.
Oh, man.
And I wonder how much of these changes were influenced by Super Mario Maker.
Yeah.
Because people really took the Mario format and made it into something very different.
Yeah.
And very interesting. And
Yeah.
and there were a lot of interesting mechanics that could be done using just like Mario characters. Like the first thing I made with it was like a Zelda or like a Metroid like,
Yeah.
where you could only get past a certain area by having a black shell, and you would have to go to a certain part of the screen to get the black shell, and then you'd have to take it back to unlock that area, and then you'd probably have to backtrack to another part to get a star, and then that, so on and so forth. That's not something I had seen Nintendo necessarily doing.
That's funny because you're describing that. I'm like, oh yeah, that's Mario. But no, you're right. That was a Mario Maker thing, not a Nintendo thing ever.
Right.
Huh. Has any of that? I didn't. Again, I played a little. I played through some of Mario Wonder, and I didn't notice any of that. Did you notice anything carried over from Mario Maker into Wonder?
I do think the willingness to I think removing the time limit just gave them the option to do a slower paced, more like exploration focused thing. One thing that I think goes with that is the Wonder Seed mechanic. So every game, every level, I believe, has 2 Wonder Seeds. The one you get for just completing the level all the way through, and then a second one that is hidden somewhere in the level. And that's the one where you find it midway through the level and it activates all the weird stuff that happens. In many levels, you can miss that seed if you're not paying attention.
And I have.
And oftentimes you need to go and like kind of hunt for it. It might be, it might be hidden behind. I think there was one instance of there was like a turtle walking by, and to get the seed, you needed to hit a question block that was like in a corner where you couldn't jump on it and you couldn't slide into it. You couldn't ground pound. It was like in a corner. You would have to throw a turtle seed, and you had to go further forward in the level to get the turtle and then come back. Not super far forward, but it was enough to where you couldn't see the question mark block anymore. So like, one screen's length of real estate, but then you did have to go back.
Which is more than any Mario before it, yeah.
Yeah, at least as far as I know. And I'm just interested to see like what other kind of ideas from essentially open sourcing the Mario mechanics, what really comes from that.
Is there any word on another Mario Maker?
I don't know. I haven't heard anything. It would be cool to see them add the Wonder game as like a series of updates for Super Mario Maker 2. Although I think it would be more likely that they just come out with a new one.
I think so. I think Mario Maker 2 I think they've entered the era where Nintendo's not updating it or caring anymore, I think.
That's what I've heard.
That's through the grapevine of the internet. That's what I've heard.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. But they did have like this whole menu dedicated to like alternate styles. And there was only one other game in there.
I remember that. I was waiting for so long for them to add anything else. I don't know what they would add. I don't know. But I know Mario Maker, I know Mario Wonder also added another new thing that the other Marios didn't have, which is a Souls-like multiplayer thing. Like ghosts when you're walking around that you can see.
Oh yeah, I did want to talk about the multiplayer mechanics in that game. I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah, because I remember playing that and I was like, this is straight up the ghosts from a Souls game that are just walking around. But I think those are in real time though, unlike a Souls game.
Yes. So the way the mechanic works is you have to go in and you have to activate Wi-Fi mode, which is so Nintendo. Like it's not on by default. It's not a main. You have to like go to Mr. Wi-Fi.
There's like a Wi-Fi tower in the game. Yeah. A 5G tower in Mario World.
So you go talk to them, you turn it on, and then all of a sudden, just anywhere from 1 to 4 ghosts will appear in your game. And they might be in the overworld, and you can just like run around and see this other person. Or they might appear in the level, like progressing through it at the same time as you. Generally, you don't interact with them. However, and I don't know if this is... So, when you're playing multiplayer, which I've been playing the entire game multiplayer, multiplayer and online. When you die, you turn into a ghost, and the other person playing can go and touch your ghost, and you will come back. It will respawn you at that location. In the online mode, if you turn into a ghost, any of the other people who are playing online can touch you and like essentially, respawn you at that location.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
And I think it's pretty well done because there's not really it's mostly just visual. It's mostly just, oh, I'm here with another person and we're playing the game together. And it's cool. It's just a cool thing. But on the off, when you die, you can race over to them. You have some control as a ghost. But I am motivated. I see somebody who just died. I'm motivated to go and help them. I think it's cool. And there's not really any benefit for me to do it. But it's just, why not? Why not help this person? And I love games that encourage cooperation and in that way through online mechanics. It's really cool.
Therein lies the difference between you and me. I would be dodging those ghosts at all costs, and I would be laughing. But no, that sounds fun, and that it straight up reminded me of the Dark Souls. Even though in the Souls games, the ghosts, you don't interact with them, and I don't think they can see you. It's like you see what players have done. I've never, because I always try to wave at them or something to see if they can actually see me. I've never done the research to tell. I believe you're just seeing what players have previously done. They'll just randomly appear.
Right. On that note, they take a slight hint from Elden Ring. Elden Ring had a mechanic that allowed you to essentially drop a sign or drop a note that other people could see. It's a very watered down version of that, or not watered down, but it's a very simplified version of that. But you can drop a sign at any location, and if you can make it to one of the signs, I think it has the same effect of if you're a ghost, it will bring you back.
Oh.
But people tend to use them to some people just drop them anywhere, and it just makes the game a touch easier. Some people will, do it to show off of getting to a really difficult place on the map, and dropping a sign to show that they made it.
So they could put it somewhere where you wouldn't think that you could get to, but you see a sign there, you're like, oh shoot, I can go there.
Yes.
Okay, that's cool.
And I've similarly you could use it to kind of highlight there's a hidden object over here or something. It's pretty cool. For a company that is pretty well known for not doing online very great, I think what they do well is interesting mechanics with online. Everything up until actually allowing online play. Yeah. Things like this, Street Pass, the Miiverse. They did a lot. They do try and do interesting things with online. And I always appreciate that. Same with the Souls games. I love the community that kind of just spawned around leaving weird messages for people.
Leaving a dog at every single animal in the game that's not a dog.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that stuff.
The first time I found a giant turtle and there was a little note and it just said dog was incredible.
Magical. I like that this modern take on multiplayer, solo multiplayer. Death Stranding does a thing kind of like that. You ever played that game? God, this is a whole nother topic. Is this minimalist multiplayer? I don't know what you'd call it.
Yeah. Asynchronous multiplayer, I think, is a term I've heard thrown around.
That might be it. That might be something. But yeah, no, Death Stranding has something like that where... Do you know anything about Death Stranding?
I know about it. I have not played it.
It's a walking sim. It is a UPS simulator. You play as the UPS man, or in this modern age, you play as the Amazon guy, going around delivering packages. But you have equipment like ladders, ropes, stuff like that you can leave. And sometimes when you use those and you just leave them there, they'll appear in other players' worlds.
Oh,
And
okay.
then they can use those, and they can give you a little thumbs up if it's good. And if it gets enough thumbs up, it'll like persist into more players' worlds.
Oh,
So
how cool.
the better you use an equipment on, the more other people get to use it.
Now, is there any incentive for you to put a ladder in a good place? Like, if you get a bunch of thumbs up, does that do anything for you, or is it just, oh, I'm a good person?
I think you just get score for it, and it like raises your online rank, I believe.
Okay.
So again, with the ranking stuff, I think it's just score stuff. I don't think you actually get anything tangible. But I haven't beat it, and I don't know how far I am into it. I put so many hours into it. I don't even think I'm halfway.
Oh man,
It is a beefy game, and I'm excited for 2. But
this is the first time hearing that there's a 2, actually.
really,
Yeah.
oh,
I knew he
man.
was working on another game, but I didn't know it was Death Stranding.
Death Stranding 2. Yeah, I'm excited for that one too. It looks. Oh, there's a trailer you gotta watch after this. Insane.
Oh man.
It is. It's Kojima. I like Kojima. I feel like sometimes he's a bit overhyped for what he does, but I really like Kojima. I like what he does.
Yeah. He's definitely made a name for himself in just that he will make the craziest shit you've ever seen in your life.
See, the problem with that is he'll do that, and then he'll say it's for some like divine reason, but it's just because it's funny and stupid. But he tries to mask it with no, it's really serious and cool. I don't know. Maybe if it's all a character, then good job, Kojima. You're the best. But if it's not a character, then come on, just admit it's funny. But yeah, I want more games like that do this weird minimalist multiplayer, asynchronous multiplayer.
There is one that I have not had the opportunity to play, and I need to quickly check that I'm remembering the name correctly.
I'm trying to think off the top of my head anymore.
Yes. It is called Phantom Abyss. Have you heard of this game?
I think I've heard the name, but I think that is nope. I have not heard of this game.
Okay, so it is
Enlighten me.
It is a platformer game, in the style of like a Indiana Jones. You're in this temple and you're trying to escape through all these traps. I believe it's procedurally generated, but you're essentially playing with a bunch of the ghost from like a Mario Kart. When you race against the ghost, you're racing against like a ton of different people who have played this level at some point. And so it's just this giant crowd of people running and trying to get through this giant obstacle course.
Interesting.
It's been a minute. I believe it's out now. The last I heard of it, it was in early access. I don't know. I probably should have not talked about this without knowing a little bit more.
No, this is the
But it's
first
just
time.
it's just another interesting implementation of asynchronous multiplayer.
Are you working against the like other players' ghosts, or are you working with them?
I believe you're working against them.
Okay.
And so you have the feeling of being in like a giant lobby with a bunch of people, but I think all of those are just loaded in. It's a ghost. It's a ghost of somebody else's playthrough that you're playing against. And I guess theoretically you could be running and you could see like a group of them getting hit by spikes, and then you avoid the spikes.
Yeah, very much in the Dark Souls when you touch like a blood stain on the ground and you can see how another player just died.
Yeah.
Which is neat. No, I hadn't heard about this. This is cool. It in the vein of ghosts, I guess Tekken does a similar thing. The new Tekken 8.
Oh.
It has AI ghosts you can fight, which as you're playing online, your ghost learns from you. And every now and again you can go and fight your own ghost, just check up on it, see how it's doing. Mine does some stuff that I had never done before, so I don't know how it works.
That's similar to how the amiibo were supposed to work in Smash.
Yeah.
I I haven't really interacted with that mechanic much. I've always been very dubious of it.
The weird thing with the amiibo for me is apparently they can learn, like, you use a Mario amiibo, but you play as someone else and it can still learn that way, question mark?
Yeah.
See, the Tekken one, whatever character you're playing, it learns what you're doing as that character. And there's a ghost for each character you have.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious
I see.
as to how the amiibo works, because you could play as anyone and it learns from that.
That's a really good point. I wonder how much of that is legitimate effort they put into making that system work and how much of it is marketing fluff.
Right.
Because we don't really have any way of knowing.
Right. It's just a little difficulty. Like, the AI just gets harder.
Yeah.
It's just a little slider.
You've gotten better, so that's why it's a tougher opponent now.
Right.
Look at you.
I don't know if they used the word AI when they said amiibos, but in Tekken 8, they straight up were like, these are AI ghosts that learn from you. I'm like, oh.
That could mean a lot of things.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting idea. And I do like the idea of, what if instead of necessarily having AI bots, it's always been AI bots, like computer, but having, what if you can't play online necessarily, you have a bad connection, but here's a ghost of somebody else's playthrough. And so it still feels like a real person, even though you might not have the ability to do that right now. It's an interesting idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I think mainly that's what it's for, is for people that like playing online but don't like playing against other people.
Yeah.
I don't know. I tried the ghosts though, and they're hard. I'd much prefer playing against an actual person.
Fair.
But no, the asynchronous multiplayer, that is the word for it, actually. You were right.
Nice. Yeah, well, that's kind of devolved from Mario Wonder, but that was the goal. I just kind of wanted to talk about some of these different mechanics and talk about how the series has changed with this new entry.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. Did you get to the plant level?
Yes,
Were they
I
singing?
did. Yes, it was glorious.
That. I like, all right, I'm done with the game. That's all I needed to play. I got my $60 worth.
It was so good. It was so joyous.
Oh, it was beautiful.
I can't wait to see what other things like that are in the game. Anything else? We could also talk about if there's anything that you've been playing this week. We could talk about that.
I'm guessing you've been playing Mario Wonder.
Yes. That's been my week.
Well, I've been playing RimWorld after our last episode.
Oh, nice.
Talked about it, and I was like, I got to jump back in RimWorld a bit. It's a fun world. They have a new... I'm trying out... Well, it's not a new DLC. I just haven't played it in a while. Their second to newest DLC. I haven't played the newest DLC yet, but their second to newest is Religion. You can make your own... They call it an ideoligion. Ideology religion.
Okay.
So yeah, their second to newest DLC is called Ideoligion. You can like make a religion either from the ground up or pick one, and they can be as basic as Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, stuff like that, all the way up to like I worship all the gods and I believe in self-flagellation and blinding our followers.
Nice.
It can be insane religions, or it can be really simple religions, or you can turn them off and let everyone else worship stuff, but you don't. It's a neat DLC. I'm starting off with something simple. I just made Catholicism.
All right. As you do.
I'm trying to think what they're called memes that you can give to your religions. Your religion has different tiers of memes.
Okay.
Like a low tier meme for Catholicism would be guilt. They feel guilty and that like they're not worthy and their God is blah blah blah. They believe that other people are more worthy and stuff like that. I don't know if is that Catholicism?
I cannot speak to this.
Me neither. But yeah, I think that's the thing I picked. And what is it? Pro-human. There's like a pro-human meme. So animals, you can't like form bonds with animals, but you get like a like a medical expert or something. You get something for it. There's like trade-offs. I forget what it was, but I thought this is going to be a simple run for my first time in this weird DLC. But I'm excited for the next DLC after this because it adds like different races.
Oh.
There's like, I'm sure they're not called tieflings, but they're straight up like D&D tieflings. They're like horned people.
Okay.
There's like, I think there was one, like there was squirrel people. And there's babies, which you couldn't do before. You can like raise new colonists from childhood, which you couldn't do before. You had to like capture people to get new colonists. Either that or they'd have to join you through a quest or something.
That seems like a pretty significant change.
Yeah. There's like, you have to build like a school and like caring for children, man.
Oh, man.
But I haven't played that one yet. I'm working my way there. I'm getting through religion.
I did not realize that RimWorld was in active development. I thought that it was just an older game that kind of got put to the side.
Let me look up when the newest DLC. I might be speaking out of my ass here. Oh yeah, no, they announced a new DLC this year, I think. But yeah, no, that's the thing I like about the RimWorld DLCs is they're not adding they're not just straight up adding new content to it like a mod would.
Mm-hmm.
They're changing the base game and how it works with every DLC, which is insane. Like the religion thing adds so much to what it was before.
Right.
Like not only do you have to worry about food, water, and shelter, you have to worry about food, water, and shelter and praying and other stuff like that, or your colonists get pissed off.
So can you buy the DLC piecemeal, or is it like a progressive thing?
Yeah, you can buy them all and just turn them off if you want, if you don't want to play with them. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Or you just buy the RimWorld. Who's it by? RimWorld is notorious for never being on sale, and neither are their DLCs. So I just remembered the guilty meme that I was talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Turns all your colonists into masochists. Is what it does. That's why I picked it, because mood is like a big thing in RimWorld.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take any damage and then they just have a bad mood, it could like ruin them. But like with my colonists now, when they take any damage, they're so pleased to be in pain. I'm like, yeah, perfect. Makes it easier.
Please, more.
But that's what I've been doing this week.
Nice.
Mostly.
Nice. Yeah, it's been mostly Mario Wonder for me. A little bit of Pokemon Unite here and there with my crew.
Yeah. Still going strong on that?
Yeah, they had a new patch that came out this week that fixed... there was some really, really bad balancing stuff that had come out. It made that a little bit better, so the game is a little bit more tolerable now. Yeah, I figured we could wrap things up and just talk about a new release that came out that is not even necessarily a release. This is the Dragon's Dogma 2 character creator.
Oh yeah,
which got released on Steam as its own game for free.
Bold move.
Yeah.
Trying to sell their game based on the character creation alone.
And based on the number of people I've seen just posting pictures of the characters they made, is good marketing.
Huh.
That is like, man, I've been seeing people, as happens with any new character creator that comes out, people are like, oh my God, I made SpongeBob. I made, I made Rick and Morty in the game. I think, which of the fighting games was it? Street Fighter that had the really in-depth character creator.
Yeah. People were making some abominations in that game.
But yeah, honestly, it's kind of cool. I'm vaguely interested in
oh my God, yeah.
being able to access it separately, just because I personally spend so much time using the character creator in games. I can go ahead and have my character all built out and take my time with it before the game even comes out. If I end up buying the game, I don't know. I haven't played all of Dragon's Dogma, the original.
Oh man, you should. Great game.
I played a little bit of it, and I really enjoyed it. It clicked with me more than Skyrim did.
I was gonna say it came out. I think it might have gotten overshadowed by Skyrim, if I recall correctly. But while everyone was playing Skyrim, I was playing Dragon's Dogma, and I was enjoying the heck out of it.
While you were busy going to parties, I was mastering the blade.
Exactly, that was me. But no, to give it good praise, I'll say that I've actually gotten to the end and fought the boss of Dragon's Dogma.
Oh, nice.
I haven't done that once for Skyrim.
You fought the dog?
Yeah, I fought the dog and his dragon.
You fought the dragon and his dog mom.
Yeah.
His dog ma.
Yeah.
All right.
Merlin, keep that in. Yeah. No, that's as high as praise it's going to get, is that I've actually beat it.
Honestly, yeah, that's pretty high praise.
Which I want to rectify what I said last time when you were talking about not being good at games, and I said, is it more embarrassing to be good at games? I'm not good at games. I just like them a lot and played a lot of them.
I think there are different levels, but you were definitely better than me.
Yeah, it's all relative. Can I tell the Sand Dragon story?
I was literally thinking about the Sand Dragon story.
Or is
I
it
think
okay?
you have to.
Okay. We bought Shadow of the Colossus, the remaster for PS3
I believe so.
or remake something.
And this is in the era where like you want to play a game, for the most part, you gotta like go to GameStop.
Yeah.
See what's on clearance,
Yeah.
what I can afford with $20.
Yeah.
So ended up getting Shadow of the Colossus for the PS3.
We got Shadow of the Colossus, beautiful game. We fell in love with it. But we were sort of trading off, right? I was like,
think
here,
so.
I fight a boss, you fight a boss, I fight a boss. We get to the Sand Dragon part, and poor Sammy boy kept falling off that Sand Dragon back into the sand, because it's a big flying creature in a big desert, and you have to jump on its back and navigate to its head to stab it, I think, if I'm recalling correctly.
Yes.
Something along those lines.
The kicker being that you could only be fast enough to grab onto it if you were on the horse.
Right.
And you were on the horse, and then you had to jump from your horse onto the dragon.
Yeah, and then every time you fall off, it's so fast that you've been displaced such a far amount away. You have to call your horse to come to you to get on the horse to get to the dragon. All that to say, it took Sam about 3 hours.
Yeah, and that's saying we maybe spent 8 hours on the whole game.
Yeah, the Sand
We
Dragon.
knocked that thing out pretty fast in a good chunk of it. Was just hours and hours of me slamming my head against the wall trying to get past this dragon.
It was 3 hours.
I still consider it my greatest achievement.
Me too.
To date.
Me too. That was amazing.
It was
I
a
enjoyed
personal triumph.
all 3 of those hours. That was fun. But the rest of the game went by, and it was great. But yeah, I will always think back to that moment when we talk about how hard video games are and can be.
I have a feeling you would have gotten that one within 2 tries.
Probably not. Probably 2 hours. That's funny. We got the Shadow of the Colossus Eco.
Yes.
Eco. It was on the same disc, but we never even played Eco.
I think we started it and got, maybe an hour or so in. Not for lack of enjoyment, but I think it was just we ran out of time.
Yeah. I remember that. We went and got 20 tacos from Jack in the Box.
Yeah, can we get 20 tacos? You're telling me you want 20 tacos?
Oh,
Yeah. All right.
But where were we even? What were we? We were talking about Dragon's Dogma before.
Oh yeah, we were talking about Dragon's Dogma, and then you mentioned got on the subject of difficulty again.
It's got to be a topic, like a full-on episode, because difficulty in games, man.
It's a big thing. It's a it's a very interesting conversation, and I think it's kind of an evolving topic as time has gone on, and I'm curious to see where it goes in the future. But more to come on that.
Yeah. But yeah, I'd say that's a wrap on episode 2, eh?
I think that's a wrap.
Yeah. Let us know how you're enjoying Dragon's Dogma's 2 character creator.
Yeah. Let us know what your favorite cooking game is.
Yeah.
Or game with cooking mechanics.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there's some we've missed. I'm sure there's some really awesome cooking mechanics out there that we just have not had experience with.
Can you think of any more that are like a good cook? Give us more good cooking games that integrate the core mechanics of the game into the cooking section. Merlin?
I hope I don't know if we're going to be able to edit that out.
That's fine. Merlin's telling us all about the cooking games.
Yeah. Well, we can do pickup for that if we need to.
We'll find a good spot to end it.
Oh. All right. Yeah, that's the end.
Perfect. Pancakes, and that was the entire game. It was making pancakes.
While you were busy going to parties, I was mastering the blade.